A very good evening and welcome to KTN News. This is the newsroom, the nerve center for all the operations. Right here is where you get every information that we put out to you, the newspaper, the television, and all our channels. A very good evening. My name is Ken Mijungu, and in exactly 11 months' time, Kenyans will be heading back to the polls in the 2022 general election, and a region with critical numbers find itself, of course, at crossroads. The mountain is rumbling, with both insiders and outsiders scrambling for a piece of the mountain. With this season of alignments and realignments, top contenders in the 2022 general election for presidential seats are seen to pay particular attention to the Mount Kenya region. We'll find out why, capped with several trips and promises with hopes of winning support from even just a small percentage of the vote-rich region. And of course, we will be breaking down the numbers for you tonight, right from 1992, how the mountain voted, who they voted for, to the repeat election in 2017. Before then, let me take you to my colleague, Sophia Wanuna. Sophia?
Thank you, Ken. Yes, we will have that data, the numbers, and how they've played out in the past general elections. And so all eyes are currently on central Kenya and whether they will organize themselves behind one leader, as they mostly do. But with other parties emerging and clear divisions among the top political leaders, it appears the mountain is groping in the dark in search of a winning formula. But what does this mean for the rest of the country, and especially those seeking the top seat come next year? Akisa.
Now tonight on Kivumbi 2022, we look at the scramble for Mount Kenya and why all eyes seem to be fixated on this region. What really are the stakes in the upcoming polls? We interrogate how they have voted in the past as we attempt to answer the big question now. Will the region form part of the winning team, or is it headed into political abyss? We'll be having those conversations with the top leaders, as Sophia Wanuna will be introducing us to them shortly. Sophia.
Indeed, we will be having, and I have already on set with me, the leader of majority in the National Assembly. He's also the KPP Member of Parliament, Amos Kimunya, will be giving us his insights about this subject that has elicited a lot of activity in the political landscape. There has been a lot of jostling, scramble, if you like it, for the mountain, with all the leaders turning their guns and attention there. Why is that? We'll dissect that, and later on we'll have Professor Peter Kagwanja as well, a political commentator. Daragwa MP Jeremiah Kioni as well will be with us right here on Kivumbi 2022. But first, to set the stage for us this evening, Ken Mijungu.
All right, let's take you now straight to Mount Kenya, because there's a lot of things that have been said about this election, especially that Mount Kenya would be swing vote or the deciding vote. But let's listen to the soundbite.
Mount Kenya region has remained the political hotbed in the crafting of new governments in the past elections. Since the 1992 elections, the region has seen powerful political leaders and brokers that have snaked their way up to the top seat in the land. But the 2022 general election for the first time is exposing the Mount Kenya region once a one-voting bloc into a possible swing vote in the next polls. Any candidate who attracts a huge turnout in the region stands a high probability of winning the presidential election. Mount Kenya region has a network of powerful businessmen who have previously used their resources to influence voting patterns, these with their own at the ballot.
Kawe na wasiwasi ambao munasikia pesa imemwagwa Central.
You can rent a Kikuyu, but you can never buy a Kikuyu. Wa Kikuyu wako na mwenyewe is in control.
Critics have said the mountain votes with selfish political and economic interest in mind. Kenya returned to multi-party politics in December 1992, so the region produced two strong candidates, Kenneth Matiba and Mwai Kibaki, who were flawed by the late second president Daniel Moi. It was argued that if the duo formed a united political front, they would have garnered more votes to trounce Moi. Matiba boycotted the 1997 elections, leaving the field for Kibaki, who vied and emerged the second. It is the 2002 election that brought Mount Kenya to the political limelight after two candidates from the region vied for the presidency, Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta. Although the two shared the Kikuyu votes, President Kibaki emerged the winner after garnering huge votes from other parts of the country. The vote saw KANU trounced for the first time. Come the 2007 general election, the powerful coalition formed by Kibaki fell apart, but luckily for him, he had the support of Uhuru, who crossed over to back him against Odinga. The unity portrayed in 2007 by the Mount Kenya region will be replicated again in 2013, when President Uhuru Kenyatta vied with his TNA party, garnering more than 88% of the total votes cast in Central Region, as well as votes from the Rift Valley. President Kenyatta seeking to recapture the seat in 2017, once again the region put their unity in front, voting overwhelmingly for their perceived kingpin Uhuru Kenyatta, and not only once but twice after the Supreme Court ordered for fresh presidential election. With the 2022 elections on the horizon, the Mount Kenya voting bloc is attracting more political interest than ever before since the advent of multi-party democracy. It could be the first time since 1992 that the region will not have one of its own as a strong candidate for the presidency, and with lack of a clear successor when Uhuru retires in 2022, this has triggered a high-stakes game to control a population that decisively delivered victories during the 2007, 2013 and 2017 general elections. The vote bloc comprises Kiambu, Murang'a, Nyeri, Embu, Kirinyaga, Nyandarua, Meru and Tharaka Nithi. And though they are in the Rift Valley bloc, Laikipia and Nakuru counties have been associated with the Mount Kenya region. Deputy President William Ruto, party leaders Raila Odinga of the ODM, ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi and his Wiper counterpart Kalonzo Musyoka have all shown keen interest in the region. Several leaders from the region have, however, declared their interest to vie for the top seat, among them Murang'a Governor Mwangi wa Iria and National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi.
Ni lazima tuyafikirie sana maana ya umoja wa watu wetu.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is expected to give political direction, is yet to do so, although he has shown signs of backing his former nemesis Raila Odinga.
Much as we respect his right to back Raila Odinga, he should allow us to back William Ruto, because that is the essence of democracy.
Vile ambao tutapewa direction na president, vile amesimama katika upande wa handshake, tunajua yeye anajua kile sisi ambayo hatujui.
And with the Kivumbi 2022 slowly gaining momentum, it remains to be seen the political landscape for the region this time round. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News.
Of course, it's been described in so many names. Center of interest, the swing vote, it's been called as the decider. And about 4 weeks ago, we showed you why Mount Kenya region is of great interest, because this is a vote-rich region. And for the first time, there's no clear presidential candidate in spite of Mwangi wa Iria and the Speaker of the National Assembly expressing their interest in the top position. But let's take you back, because numbers don't lie. Let's take you back to the year 1992, the first multi-party election in the country, and see how they performed. So the first multi-party election was in 1992. That was the 29th of December. Traditionally, our elections were held in December before 2010 Constitution. The total number of registered voters at that time was 7.9 million. This essentially is almost the kind of voter block that Central Kenya or the Mount Kenya region has. But those were the total number of registered voters, just under 8 million. The voter turnout was 69.4%. That was about 5.49 million voters at that time. And of course, in 1992, we only had 188 constituency. Let's say the next board now. And these are the candidates in that election. First multi-party election, there were several parties that came out to present candidates for that election. And of course, that election was won by the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi with 36%. He was in Kanu. Kenneth Matiba Ford Asili came second. He was from Central Kenya with 26%. Mwai Kibaki also from Central, 19%. That was on DP. Oginga Odinga, Ford Kenya first time, 17%. And of course, there was Chibule Wasuma KNC at 0.6%. The next slide for 1992 now. And Kenneth Matiba at that time took about 1.4 million votes out of the 7.9 million votes. That was 60%. Central Kenya. And of course, Mwai Kibaki, who ran on DP, took 35% of the vote. Total, it was about 2.5 million votes taken by Central Kenya out of the 7.9 million registered voters. Distribution in Parliament, this is very interesting. You have to pay some attention. 67% of Ford Asili, then, members in Parliament were Kikuyus. 61% of Ford Kenya in Parliament at that time were Luo. 52% of DP led by Mwai Kibaki, very interesting, were Kikuyus, but there was no single Luo or Kikuyu who won a seat through KANU. First multi-party election in 1992. I think we're skipping to 1997 now election. Same date, December 29th, 1997. Registered voters were 9 million, an increase of about 1.5 million votes. Then voter turnout was 65%, highest at that time. That was about 5.9 million voters coming out, and constituencies dramatically increased to 210, about 30 more constituencies. Next slide. This is the candidates for that election. One of the highest, Daniel Arap Moi, won it again at 40% of the total number of votes. Raila Odinga ran fast with NDP at 10%. But I'm forgetting, very important again for our discussion today, Mwai Kibaki, DP, 30%. Moi was 40%. Raila Odinga was 10%. And this is the realization that they need to come together to win an election because a lot of votes were going out. If you tally the whole of this, Michael Kijana Wamalo, who later became Mwai Kibaki's first vice president at 8.2%. Charity Ngilu, first woman to run for president, SDP, 7.9%. Martin Shikuku, you remember him, that famous picture of him and Orengo, James Orengo, at Topper pickup campaigning for the multi-party democracy, which we talked about. He got a paltry 0.6% with Ford Asili. Katama Mkangi, Kenya National Congress, later used by, I think, Peter Kenneth, got a paltry 0.3%. Next slide. All right, candidates in that election still continue. I think there were about 15 candidates in this election in 1997. Kwegi Wamwere, Kenda, who later shaved his hair, you know that. Munya Wayaki, Godfrey Mwereria, Wangari Maathai, the second woman to run for president after Charity Ngilu, with LPK at 0.7%. No one was paying attention, no one was voting. Perhaps the best president Kenya could have, Stephen Olude, 0.6%. David Wamwere Ngethe of UMA, very interesting, 0.6%. Next slide now. And these are still distribution now by province. Let's take a look at how the Mount Kenya region, that was Central Province, voted at that time in that election. Moi again won the election. Moi got 5.6% in 1997 from that election. But most of the votes in Central Kenya went to Mwai Kibaki with DP, 89.4%. Basically cleared it. Raila Odinga, a paltry 0.7%. Wamalwa Kijana, 0.3%. And Charity Ngilu, 3.1% from Central Kenya. Unless, I think this is our last slide for 1997. Still distribution in Parliament now. Very important. Pay attention to this. KANU had 107 seats. Out of the 107 seats, 11 seats were unopposed for KANU in Parliament in 1997. Democratic Party at that time won 39 seats, very low compared to KANU. NDP, 21 seats. Ford Kenya, 17. SDP, 15. And of course, this lawyer with Safina got 5 seats. That was the distribution in Parliament in 1997. The dynamics have changed. Mwai Kibaki took most of the time majority votes from Central Kenya together with the other candidates from Central Kenya. So traditionally, Central Kenya until 1997 voted for their own. Sophia.
Many thanks, Ken, for that presentation, laying out for us lay of the land as it was back then, 1992, 1997, and we'll have more data from the 2002, 07, 13, and 17, just so that you have a clear picture of how that has played out. But what is crucial about why even we're having this conversation tonight is that this region has become so lucrative because of the numerical strength. And so going into a transition election where President Uhuru Kenyatta is exiting the stage and there isn't an heir apparent, hence the jostling, the scramble, because everyone seeking a piece of the cake. This is a region that has produced 3 out of the 4 presidents in this country. So again, finding itself in an awkward and familiar territory in that there isn't one, what you'd like to say, obvious successor to the president from that region. And hence, whilst the politicians there are trying to consolidate and come together to see who can be their champion, there are those as individuals who've come out to say they will vie for presidency. However, that has in no way stopped other politicians to come out and try to seek the support of the Mount Kenya region. And so to talk more about just what all of this means, what we're likely to see in coming days, is the leader of majority in the National Assembly. That's Honorable Amos Kimunya. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Kivumbi 2022.
It's my pleasure.
It's good to see you after some time. Let's begin by something that the president has said on record, saying that it is time that the presidency went beyond 2 regions, and one, of course, is Mount Kenya, and as mentioned, 3 of the 4 presidents have come from Central and the Rift Valley. So as there's so much jostling for the attention and the vote and support of this region, the president is of the view that people should be looking elsewhere. What do you make of that sentiment?
No, I think, just to put it in context, if I remember, what the president said is, because people are talking of, if you come from certain families, you should not do certain things. And he said, if I was to use the same logic, then I would also say that because 2 ethnic communities have produced a president, that it's then time for others. I don't think he actually meant that, you know, the presidency should shift to others, but he was basically extending the argument about families and all that. It had been said somewhere.
He actually was categorical, sir. He actually said it is time for the presidency to move beyond these 2. He said
using this logic, then I could also argue. I think that was his word. The operating words was, you know, that based on the argument that were being made about some families have been in power, but all that.
Right.
But be that as it may, I think as leaders from Mount Kenya and as people who have been in government for a long time, some of us do recognize, obviously, that Kenya is made up of, you know, upwards of 43 communities. And surely it can't be that only 2 communities can monopolize the power. It's time, if we have to move into the national cohesion, if we have to move national unity, if we have to avoid conflicts, it will be good to give the opportunity to everyone, and not just dominate and say because we have the numbers, we must always dominate.
But it's universal suffrage. You cannot also say then we must, you know.
It's universal suffrage.
Yeah.
But you see, why do you have all these conflicts in Africa? Is because, and we saw that in 2007, where communities almost gathered. You know, you had about 41 versus 1, almost like, you know, why must it always be a Kikuyu? So after, you know, 16 years, between 1963 to 1978, and then another 20 years, it will not be fair, in my own thinking, to then front another candidate, to the exclusion of all the other communities, because you're basically then fueling up the tensions.
But right? Again, back to the question of universal.
But that does not mean.
Yeah. So the ones presenting themselves, the likes of the Speaker of the National Assembly.
That does not mean anyone doesn't have the right. You know, it's Article 38.
Yeah.
Gives people the opportunity. You can vie for any position. And also gives the people the opportunity. They can vote for anyone. I could wake up tomorrow and also decide I'm vying. Okay? But you also know that for anyone now from Mount Kenya trying to sell themselves to the rest of Kenya, because we're only 30%. you still have to get the support of the other 70%.
And right now, all the attention
is on Mount Kenya.
Why is that from where you sit?
From where I sit, one of the things is obviously there's that assumption that after 20 consecutive years plus, you know, the previous years, just immediately after independence, that Mount Kenya has not shown a strong interest in fronting one of their own. Okay. Individuals can come up, but you see, is it a community, you know, person? Is it a leader being fronted by the community or a person springing up? And we've seen that before. We've seen Koigwa Mwere, we've seen Munywas, we've seen other people who came up as individuals. But so there's an assumption that the community is not fronting. I'm saying an assumption. Because things will change. Things will change.
Okay.
Because there's still so many things that variables in the air. And as a community, unless people can see that their interests will be taken care of by all these candidates who are coming up, then if they don't find that interests will be taken care of in terms of equitable representation, somebody who will ensure that we get equitable representation. You just seen from the figures Ken Mijugu raised, Kibaki had 30% of the vote, Moi had 40%, right? But what did Kanu have in total, right? Kanu had 100 and something votes. Kibaki had 39 votes. What does that tell you, right? Their difference was only 10 percentage points, But in terms of the strength in parliament, it's totally skewed. So until we have that equitable representation, so that our 30% of the population should translate to 30% in parliament. Then two, if people don't see that they'll be able to get the equitable distribution of their wealth, because these guys are hardworking. And I saw Honorable Musalia Mudavadi the other day giving, when he was in Central, he said he appreciated that 60% of the income is generated from Central Kenya. That's his figures. So if they're generating 60%, surely you expect not exactly 60% back, right? But a fair representation, so that, you know, we don't end up with the region is producing the wealth, but when it comes to the share of the wealth through the devolved fund, through whatever projects that are going in, then they're only getting a pittance. So there's that representation, then equitable distribution.
Right.
The region has been in government for the last 20 years. People are used to being in government. We'd expect that whoever is coming to negotiate would have to show that I'll have a certain number of cabinet seats available. I'll have so many senior positions available for the region, right?
Yet they could renege. They
could, of course they could renege. And that's why we wanted most of those things to be captured within a constitutional framework, right? So that the 35%, which will ensure that this agricultural, because we are agriculturalists, that our agricultural production and marketing is taken care of through the devolved governments.
Okay.
So we also wanted to ensure that the formula in Article 203, that, you know, there's equitable distribution of the money, and also that we also have the extra constituencies to ensure our voice is equated to our population. Now, those things were being captured in the Constitution. Now, anyone who has been opposing that Constitution, anyone who has not been supporting, cannot then come and say, I supported when it was supposed to be put in the law, right, to protect you, just like Kibaki put the free education into the Constitution, so that nobody can deny it, right?
So you're talking about BBI here, and the proposals.
I'm talking about the proposals within the BBI.
Yeah, the proposals within BBI.
But which came from the people.
Yeah.
And the claim within the Mount Kenya region was very clear. One man, one vote, one shilling.
According to the judiciary and the judgments,
as the minimum.
It is the president's initiative. This was not a people, to the point you've made.
It was a people's initiative. The president didn't go around.
That has...
the president never went around collecting views.
Let's not go to
never saw him
let's not go to BBI. I want to ask this because the region finds itself in unfamiliar territory. So do you fear this could split the vote? Because there's all of this jostling and by the big players. So is that a concern that even with saying all of this numerical strength, it could all come down to naught?
What's likely to happen is obviously without a presidential candidate of our own, there's likely to be a very high voter apathy. because it's like what's in it for us. Especially as all these candidates are talking in terms of when people start, they're not quite sure what they're going to get out of it. You could end up with a voter apathy. The turnout that we saw in 2013,
the Durakus,
Kumera, and 2017, when people are basically saying, I would mobilize people knowing that they are not necessarily all going to vote for me, but or rather they vote for the president and vote for my position. Yeah. But now, people in 2022, I want to be mobilizing people that I believe will vote for me. I don't care about who votes for the president, because what's my interest in it? Yeah. So in Mount Kenya region, you're likely to have a huge voter apathy. And you could well lose, out of the 7 million potential voters, you could well lose like 2 million voters to that voter apathy, right? And hence, even those who are looking for votes within that region need to have that statistic in mind.
And yet you look at the deputy president and the inroads he's been making there and the visits there. He appears to be going directly to the people.
The perceived inroads. Because when you look at, let's look at the central Kenya, the origin of central Kenya, right? Out of the 44 or whatever members of parliament, he has only got 11, right? Isn't that a pointer? With 22% of the elected leaders purporting to support you, right?
But this is from the last election, so this is not him standing,
what I'm saying,
going forward.
You see, people talk through their elected representatives.
Right.
So within Nyandarua, Kiambu, Murang'a, Kirinyaga, and Nyeri, yeah? You only have 22% of the elected leaders supporting you and looking for votes for you. Now, you may have gone out there, you may hire crowds to show you have numbers. But on voting day, you're not going to hire crowds to go and vote.
He's tested already on voting day on the by-elections, and Jubilee Kieleweke has suffered devastating losses. And even when they have won by a slight margin, it has only spoken to his gaining of support from the region.
No, the by-elections are totally different ballgame.
But it still is a litmus test of sense. It does perception, does speak to something, doesn't it?
I was in Kiamba, okay? If you look at the voting patterns for Kiamba, you will see people within the Gashie Ukihara ward voted predominantly for Kariri Jama, right? Regardless of what party was in. People within the Shianda and the Karuri area voted for Kawanjiku, right? Because of that, we must have our own. And then at the middle, you had a 50-50, right? So the difference was really the voter turnouts in strongholds. Right?
Yet voter turnout is always an issue.
Basically, it's in the by-elections, it's not just the party, right? In fact, both parties came and brought strength and almost evened out the impact of the parties. But there's local politics. We must vote our own. We cannot lose this seat. Remember, the people in Shianda, Karori have always had Karume, they had now Koinange. The people in Gashie had the Kivumbi, right? So people have their own local issues.
Bottom line.
By-elections are probably the worst indicator of what will happen in the main election.
And yet you fought very hard, because even the feeling within the Kieleweke side.
We fought hard.
Because you knew what it meant.
We won.
Juja as well.
We won Muguga. Juja was a totally different story.
You cannot cherry pick, dismiss what didn't work for you,
Kiamba
and then embrace that which you perceive.
Was the real fought out, with proper strategy, with everything getting right, getting the right candidates, and now sizing up one another, right? But like I'm saying, by-elections are the worst indicator of what will happen in the main election.
I want us to move away from that.
But let's go back to the Mount Kenya.
Yes.
Right? Like I said, there are certain expectations by the people, right? And if those expectations are not met by whoever candidate is coming there, it does not matter whether it's a church, whether it's a business community, whether it's members of parliament who are bringing you, the people are very clear on what they want.
So I want us to continue with that conversation shortly. We want to take a short break just so that we can update our viewers on what to expect at the top of the hour during our bulletin. But an important point you raised, which we'll proceed from, especially on also the person of Raila Odinga. And there's been a sentiment that he's unsellable, unelectable in the region. Is it? That's a good question that I want to have you to answer after this short break. Please stay with us here on Kivumbi 2020.